we start, I may introduce our guest professor. It's Americus Reed from Wharton School. He is an outstanding marketing professor, and since we are in the US, it was crystal clear we needed to have an American. Americus, come over here. Big hand.
Appreciate you, sir. Thanks very much. By the way, it was not my idea to take away your cell phones. Let me just start with that. But good afternoon. It's post-lunch. I got to wake you all up. So I want this to be a very engaging conversation. I want this to be the start of a communication, a dialogue between obviously myself and you all, but you all and yourself as colleagues in this amazing company. So I'm hoping that this is a session that is very much informative because I'm going to be talking about a lot of the research that I work on at the Wharton School. This is my 23rd year at the Wharton School, and I've been studying brands and I've been studying companies, business strategies, consumers for a very long time. So I have some things I'd love to share that I think dovetail quite nicely with this new vision, come on guys, you got to get excited now. Okay, come on, wait a minute. Don't let the outsider be more excited about your brand than you all, okay? But I have been seeing a lot of the amazing work. And one of the things I do in my class is, and by the way, I have engaged with lots and lots and lots of companies who have done rebrands. And I have to say, in absorbing and internalizing all of the materials that have been given to me with respect to the Umdash group, this is one of the most highest quality level rebrands I've ever seen in my 23 years at the Wharton School. So let me start with that. Absolutely incredible. So what I want to talk about today is, I really want to, and this is the name of the talk, I had to be a little cute with this, brand new. Come on, guys. Get excited. I need some energy. I need passion about this, just like the core values. Why the Umdash Group rebrand is essential to future success, right? So Wolfgang and colleagues have been talking about the values, the we journey, right? All of these incredible aspects, the pillars that are the support structure that will take you and your colleagues to a new level of growth, a new level of innovation, a new level of leadership in your industries. So I want to spend some time talking about this, and I want to show you some things in the research that points to the reason why it's so critical. So my talk has 5 parts, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start talking a little bit about this notion of brand and why we care about it. Right? Because watch this now, watch it. Branding is not just some marketing exercise where you say, hey, you know what, we just changed the logo. That's not what branding is. I'm going to talk to you about what real, true branding is and why I believe that this is a great example of some of the best rebranding and best revisioning and missioning and ethos building I've ever seen, right? So we'll talk about that. I'm going to talk about this concept of why it's important to focus on brand. And why brand can be, watch this, brand can be an asset. Brand can be an asset that powers you forward in an uncertain future, in a banny. I love that. I love this notion. Yes, brittle, anxious, nonlinear, incomprehensible. The world is chaotic out there. So what does the brand do? It can become your North Star. It can be this thing that guides you. It can be this thing that helps set forth the strategy. So I want to make that case today, and I want to talk to you about why this is so critical and why we can think about this as a way to rally. Because what I want everybody to understand is this, and that is the branding process happens inside the organization first. Right? So it's important that you all as the community, the stewards of your brand, your vision, your strategy, that you all build that first from within and let it emanate to the outside world and to the outside marketplace. That's true power of branding, and that's what you all are set to be on the precipice of creating this incredible new wave of evolution in what you're doing and your growth. So I'm going to talk about that, and we're going to discuss all of these topics. And we're going to conclude to sort of segue into the work that we're going to be doing later on in the session, where we try to bring all of these ideas and your brand into reality in terms of allowing you to work on it, internalize it, empower yourselves with it, and then take it forth to your stakeholders. So I want to talk about this by sort of starting with the notion of the meaning of the brand. And marketers out there will say, okay, we know this. Americus, you're singing to the choir. But it's a really important exercise that I want to do. So I want to start by just doing something. And by the way, since I want this to be a little bit like the Wharton School, I'm going to come out into the audience a little bit so that I can make sure that everybody's paying attention. So the students that come into my class, the ones that sit in the back row, they say, oh, we'll sit in the back row because we can do the multitasking. Americus is never going to call on us. It's the exact opposite, actually. So I want to get everybody engaged in this, but I want to show you something. I want to show you, I'm going to do a gesture. Watch this. I'm going to do a gesture, and I want you all to tell me, what is this thing? What is this thing that I am gesturing? I'm going to do it 3 times. It's not the gesture you're thinking, but I'm going to do it 3 times. Watch this. What's that? Oh, come on, watch that. Did you see what just happened there? Almost Amazon Prime, yet now because it ticks in a little bit, but 99.9% of the time people say, just do it. It's the swoosh. And all I did was this. And suddenly people have an understanding of, wait a minute, I know what that means. I know what that stands for, right? And so when I look at you all's logo of the square and the building life cycle, you can have the exact same power that Nike has in introducing itself as its external marker to the world, that same kind of logic. You don't make shoes. You do scaffolding. You do digital services, ventures. You do all kinds. We create spaces, right? But I'm arguing to you today that the magic of a brand, right? Even though they do something completely different from what you all do, you can harness that same magic, right? Nike never talks about the stuff, right? They never tell you how they made the shoes. They never tell you about the process. They never tell you about the manufacturing plant and where it is and all of that kind of stuff. What do they talk about instead? Somebody yell out, what do they talk about instead? What they stand for, which is what? Life experience. What else? What jumps to mind? Just from this. You can do it. You can do it. Watch this now. You can do it. Right? So a brand like Nike says, you know what? What we really need to do is inspire people. Yeah, we think we make awesome shoes. Yeah, we think we have innovative technology in how we make the stuff. The stuff is good. But what's more important to Nike is to tell their story about what? How sport transforms your life, right? That's the narrative. And so everything under that kind of a set of associations builds that out, right? So you'll never see Nike talking about the shoelaces. Instead, you'll see them talking about, this is what can happen if you buy into the ethos, right? And if you've ever been to the Nike campus where the workers are, it's like Disneyland for people who are into sports. Because the whole ethos is really this thing of like, we love sport. Inside the building, we love this stuff. And we want to take these products to the outside world that allows us to create that kind of magic, right? That's the power of a brand. And I'm saying that you all can harness that exact same energy, that exact same psychic power, that exact same positivity, that exact same glue that brings everyone together. And that makes us, we are the Umdash group. And just like Nike, we have a community that we are proud of, right? That we buy into this vision. We buy into our brand. Okay, here's another one. Let's talk about this one. It's another global brand. What jumps to mind? What jumps to mind? Has anyone had one of these today? Okay. What is Coca-Cola all about? Happiness in a bottle. Come on. Lifestyle, right? Having fun, right? At the end of the day, when you look at it, it's basically malted battery acid in a bottle. But Coke said, no, we're going to tell a story about happiness and lifestyle and happiness in a bottle and all these kinds of things, right? Powerful brand. Raise your hand if you recognize this brand. Raise your hand if you recognize this brand. Okay, what does this brand stand for? Oh, God, watch this now. Freedom. What else? Tradition. What else? America. Watch what they're trying to do. What are they trying to do? They're trying to give you this ethos that says, if you are a proud American, then this is your car, right? It's not just something. Lots of things can get you from point A to point B, but they want to tell a little bit of a story about, say, hey, there's something about pride in your country that might play a role in how you evaluate this thing, right? That's the brand building exercise. Same category, different concept. What about this? What jumps to mind? Technology. What else? Elon Musk. Now, Silvio said this morning that he might be rich, but he has a poor mind. Elon Musk. What I will say, I don't agree with everything he does, but there's two things that I think are really interesting about his case example. And that is, number one, what you all said, which is how he reimagined the notion of this thing called EV, right? So he doesn't really see these cars as cars. What does he see them as? Computers. Robots. What else? How about a software platform on wheels? Oh, come on now. Data collection, right? It's a different way to think about what you're doing. It's a different way to look at that product and create something that stands out. And when we do the research in the psychological literature on this stuff, what we find is when you ask people about, and by the way, lots of the car brands make EVs. Lots of them have basically an EV version. But when you ask people about it, they can't really name any of the other ones. They'll say, well, let's see, in their mind, they'll say, well, let's see, there's Tesla and then there's EVs. Right? Why is that the case? It's because Elon Musk said, I'm going to put a little bit of my DNA in this, and you may disagree with how he does that, right? But I'm going to create this futurist view about this thing, this software platform on wheels, and I'm going to build a brand behind it. And guess what? I'm going to do it with zero marketing. In the sense that you've never seen the Tesla commercial. Think about that. You've never seen the Tesla commercial. Instead, it's all kind of word of mouth and Mr. Musk on this thing called X, right? Where he talks directly to his 200 million folks that are passionate advocates of what he's doing. And that's incredible to me. That idea, number one. And then number two, the fact that he said, and watch this, he said to himself, I'm going to go and be competitive in an industry of all these internal combustion engines. I'm going to take on these car makers. Like, what? I'm going to take on NASA. And you know what's interesting to me about that is he never had in his mind, like, I can't do that, like most of us would have. Most of us would have said, that's not something that I can't stretch that far. Right? So I love the fact that he has that sort of vision to say, like, I will try and I'm okay failing, but it's part of my desire to progress forward and innovate. That's all about a brand, creating a brand, and doing it in a way that creates psychological differentiation from all the other stuff. And I think the power of Umdash is the fact that the vision has been laid out. A year of hard sociological work has been done to really define, this is what we stand for. These are our core values. This is our brand. And now we're going to bring all of our business units into this umbrella under a common vision, and we're going to let that guide us into the future for future success. Very, very powerful stuff, right? Very, very powerful stuff. So what I want to get across is the fact that you do not do any of these different things, right? You don't make shoes. You don't do beverages. You don't do necessarily children's entertainment. You don't make pretty devices. You don't make cars. You don't make very expensive coffee. Starbucks, oh, come on, right? $7 for this thing. You can get it at Wawa for $3. You can get it somewhere else cheaper. Why? But there's something else, right? There's an experience behind it. Come hang out with us. Come to this place, right? There's Starbucks inside of Starbucks. Okay, that's how ubiquitous Starbucks are. And I heard it this morning, like, where's the Starbucks coffee? Well, I heard it buzzing throughout the building. So what I'm saying to you is, this is my argument. You're not doing any of this, but I promise you, like America's scaffolding, forms for pouring concrete. What does that have to do with making a pretty device and people standing in line for hours to get that device? And the answer is everything. Because it's the underlying logic of the brand building exercise that has that kind of power. So what is a brand? We want to make sure we understand this. And by the way, picking on Elon a little bit, he thought he was rebranding when he made the thing X and changed the color. That's not rebranding. That's changing your logo and changing the color. Rebranding is exactly what you've been seeing throughout this morning, which is to say we need to sit down and reimagine ourselves. We need to understand how our individual units have a common mission. We don't do exactly the same thing in ventures, in space makers, right? Store makers. We don't do the exact same thing in Doka, right? But we have a common sheet of music that we play from. And when you have a common sheet of music that you play from and everyone's on the same page, then you have the ability to not just create a logo, but create what is real branding, which is a rich, consistent, clear meaning system that defines what you stand for. That's just branding. Good branding does what branding does, but also, like has been said today during our sessions, differentiates you from competitors and connects your clients to your brand, creating some kind of loyalty. And then great branding connects in a way that your clients internalize and you internalize your brand, your ethos, your mission as an expression of who you are. Like you believe, and guys, listen to this very carefully. This can't be just some marketing exercise. Okay, we've got the new logos and we've got the new pamphlets and it looks really good and all of that. It's got to be, we believe in this, right? We're trying to create inside the building what I think about as fandom. Are you all Umdash Group fans? Raise your hand if you are. Yeah, man, come on, right? It's got to be like football, the real football, not American football. Apologies to anyone who was offended. Like, think about that. The whole country shuts down. Why? Because we're invested in that thing, right? That's the exact same thing that great companies create inside their own building through the process of creating a great brand. So when I put this one up, what's going to come to mind? It's a bit of a rhetorical question, but I want you to think about this, because if you've done your branding right, your clients, your customers, your audience, your target members, your folks that you are the brand for, your stakeholders, they will have never seen any of your internal marketing. But if you ask them, what comes to mind when you see this? They should be able to, if you've done the branding right, almost report back to you, almost paraphrase what's on those internal documents, because you've been invested in diligently creating, nurturing, reinforcing, and pushing the brand. Does that make sense? So it really requires an internalization, a commitment, taking on this thing, and that's what the workshops are going to be for, as a stage one sort of beginning conversation to make the brand real and not just some kind of marketing exercise. And so whenever I do this exercise, when I put the pictures up, it's almost like a litmus test of how well are we doing our branding. Because when the marketplace sees us, will they report back to us what we think we are? Or will they report back something different? And many times you'll find that you have an idea of what you think you are, but your marketplace has a different idea. So in some sense, this is a bit of a litmus test to be able to check on that and to make sure what you're putting out there is part of this ethos that is clearly consistent with how you define and want to see yourselves. Okay. So why should you care about this? And again, I want to impress upon you, when I teach classes at the Wharton School, I teach about 25% of the entire daytime MBA class. And one of the first things I teach, I have a bunch of kids in my class that they have to take this class. A bunch of them are like finance people. And the very first day, I have to sort of demystify this thing about branding, because they're like, oh, that branding stuff, that marketing bullshit. That's that soft stuff, like when you can't do the derivatives in the Excel sheet to do the private equity stuff, you do that marketing stuff. No. Marketing is sociological analysis. It's empirical. It's scholarly. It's deep. I love the phrase that says marketing starts with science and ends with art. Okay? And the way that we approach it at Wharton and really good marketing is that we really think about that as a process and as a process and an initiative that we take very seriously. Now, I want to watch this example. This is a great example of the power of brand. I'm going to show you this. We were talking with Julia, I think, was in a previous session. I think her little child is named Emma. Where's Julia? Is Julia here? Julia. Hi, Julia. So I want to take you back to maybe a choice that you had to make at some point. And you may recognize this brand. There's versions of this across countries. But I love this particular thought exercise. In this country, in the United States, right? You have the toddler, little Emma. She's very, very, very sick. She's screaming. Your partner says, please go down to the drugstore and get something so I can get some sleep. And you go down there and you see this choice, right? So you have this choice where you can choose this thing called Tylenol, or you can choose this thing which is essentially the store brand, right? So there's analog versions of this across all different countries. They have in the stores, go to the store brand or kind of like the country's more well-known brand. What you'll notice is this, and I pose the question to people like Emma, sorry, not to Emma, but like her mother, Julia, and I say, which one would you choose? Parents, tell me, which one of these would you choose for the very first child that's sick? First child. Now think about that. I'm not gonna expose the people who would choose A because I don't want your colleagues to have a poor view of you. But that's crazy, man. That's crazy. Like the fact that you can have a sort of national brand that can charge more money than this other thing is the same thing in terms of the active ingredients. Like, how is that possible, right? Economists would say that's not rational. No rational consumer would ever pay more for the exact same thing. So why does this happen? Why does it happen? Brand. Right? Just the brand. Brand says, hey, wait a minute. I got little Emma here. I'm in charge. I'm not sure. Yeah, I might know with certainty that it's the same stuff, but I'm not sure. And maybe I don't want to risk that. So I'm going to go with the brand that I know, that I trust, right? And the brand that you trust, they can charge more money for the exact same thing, right? Very, very powerful example. And when I think about it in my own case, you might say to yourself, well, it's different parts of the store. They're not hiding this from you. They put it right next to it. Right next to it on the store. Choose, Americus. What type of father are you? Are you trying to save $2 here or what? What are you going to do? Well, I know that for my child, this is Zora Fabiana Reed, and she's my favorite headache, but, oh, thank you very much. Bonus points for those sympathy comments. But she is 13 going on 26, but she's my favorite headache, but she's mine. So for me, like that brand says, hey, I got to trust that thing a little bit more than just the other thing. Right? So when you're doing the brand building, you're building that trust that says, hey, when we're Doka, Group, right? Store makers, we're trusted. We know that those projects, they're not going to be delayed. 7,000 projects. Only one was delayed, I think, in the conversation we were discussing. One? Wow, trust. We know these things are going to get done on time, so we're going to go with the thing that really, really matters with us, that creates that kind of a thing. And so this is the power of the brand, and I want to talk about where all of this comes from. This comes from a very famous talk, a guy by the name of Simon Sinek. You might have seen this talk. This is the third most watched TED Talk of all time. Very interesting analysis. He said, people don't buy what you do, they buy why do you do it, right? Why do you do that? And I love this comment because it says the traditional question of how can I convince consumers that my stuff is just better is a focus on what? And that's a transparent attempt to sell something. But if I focus on why, what's my ethos? Why do I exist? Group. Why am I here? Why am I going to go into the next generation and pursue growth and success? Why? Why am I doing that? And Wolfgang talked about this, right? Humility, respect, the human contact, the people, right? It all starts there. So this question of why reflects a deeper sense of understanding who you are, which then makes it easier to figure out how to be much more relational, and not just focused on transactions. So what we're trying to get to here is this notion of advocacy in all of the folks that we touch, the targets that we talk to, all of our stakeholders. We're trying to get advocacy. We're trying to get advocacy inside the building, right? You got to get passionate. Oh, guys, come on, listen to me carefully. What? Are you willing? Would you tattoo that little square and that building on your body? I don't know, I would if I was passionate enough. You follow where I'm going with this? Like, you're trying to get folks jazzed up, like we're the best at this. No one can touch us. We lead this. We lead from the front. We dominate. And I'm trying to say that this is the reason why we have this advocacy that's very, very powerful, very, very important. And when you create a connection that is emotional, that is self-expressive, when the values and ideals of your brand are perceived by your target audience to be in tune or aligned with how they see themselves, you get this thing called identity. Identity runs inside that relationship with that brand. And when you have identity as part of this, loyalty that connects you to your constituents, three things happen, which is well documented in our literature. Your customers voluntarily become willing brand ambassadors when there's self-expression in this. Watch this now. They're willing to pay more, just like what we saw with the Tylenol example or the store brand versus the national brand example. Here's the other important part, point 3. They defend you. Oh, come on, watch this now. They defend you. They defend you. Why? Why will they defend you? Exactly. Right? Your brand is a part of who they are. So if someone attacks your brand, that's an attack on them psychologically. They will defend you. They'll be your one-man, one-woman marketing department for free, which is beautiful. Right? Because they're so bought in. They see that you believe this so deeply. They say, wow, I want them to help me become better at what I do. Why? Because they believe in their ethos and their mission so deeply, and it's obvious, it's authentic. Right? So this is where we're trying to head with this. And we want to think about this. It's all over the place, very loyal sorts of customers. Raise your hand if you're on Apple iOS. Okay. Look at that. Raise your hand if you're on the other thing. Okay. Android. Okay. By the way, congratulations, Apple, on the new charger. It's revolutionary. We study these folks and the advocates who are really into this brand. It's incredible. It's incredible because they literally are so bought in. Now think about this. It's not rational to sit outside the store and wait 5 hours overnight to talk. Why? Why would you do that? It's not rational. There's something else there, right? There's community, there's strength, there's the love of talking about the new thing that's coming out, right? And that can be quite visceral with respect to a brand like Apple. Is America saying the Umdash Group is Apple? No. What I'm saying is watch what they're doing. Be inspired by that. Why can't we say that? We want to be the Apple in this space. Right? Absolutely, you can do that. And the power of doing that, I love the things that Apple does. By the way, just to give an example of this, one of the things that Apple did that was genius was they created this word called the iPad. They created a word called the iPod. They made that up. Why did they do that? Let me ask you guys. Why did they do that? Why did they create this thing called the iPod? To associate only with them, to create psychological differentiation. Oh yeah, that other stuff, those are MP3 players. But this is an iPod. No, it's not. It's just an MP3 player that's branded very well. Right? So what were they doing? Think about what they did with that. They gave their loyalists, their advocates, their own language so that they can talk to each other and reinforce that brand love that they have. Powerful stuff because they understand that we're not just making these pretty devices, we're trying to actually build a community. We're trying to build a group of people starting inside the building, that care so much about this that they are bought in and you will not be able to make them switch, right? And so brands like Apple, they permeate and become part of the culture. There's a great phrase that a colleague of mine used, the speed of culture. Now, can you be culturally relevant in what you're doing? It's a question that great brands ask themselves. So what are some of the things that we think about? Define what the brand seeks to represent. So you tell me, what does Umdash Group represent? This should be easy. This should be like the softball question. What does the Umdash Group represent? Quality. What else? I heard that word, passion. That, to me, that's like a critical thing. Passion. Do you feel this energy inside? Do you feel like, oh man, when I get up to go to work every day, it's not just tasks. It's laddering up to a bigger vision that I believe in, that I myself am so bought into that I just get the energy. I'm excited to get up every single day and do this work. Why? Because I'm making others better. Why? Because what I do it with passion. Right? So I promise you that people would look on the outside and say, Umdash Group, what do? They do these incredible kinds of B2B sorts of things. They wouldn't think that, no, there's passion inside the building, right? Because the brand is such an important piece. Why? The brand drives the strategy. So if you're not bought into the brand, if you're not bought into all this, it falls flat, right? So part of what we're trying to get everybody excited, I need y'all's energy now. What we need to get you all excited about is like, let's take this thing forth. How do I take this strategy, this vision that Wolfgang and colleagues have come up with, and how do I make it my own? How do I live it? How do I breathe it? How do I sleep it? How do I make it a big part of my purpose, an important part of how I want to operate at the highest level in this work that we do? Right? That's the power of all of this, knowing who you are and defining what you seek to represent. It's already been done. The work, at least a year's worth of work, hardcore scholarly empirical analysis to understand where are we, how are we seen, and how do we get to the next level, right? And how does the brand, Wolfgang showed you that slide, right? That pointed to this notion of where we're going and how that little piece of the puzzle was this brand piece. Super important because it connects everything under a common vision, under a common set of principles that we have to believe in for it to be real. Okay, so what are the steps to internalize this, create this Umdash Group brand to drive growth and future success? I want to point quickly to the logic of the approach that I think is going on here that's going to make you all super successful. And it's the idea that you're throwing out this old approach, this standard approach that basically just says, hey, we craft our messages in our own little silos in the business units that we're working in, right? Messages are reactive. Our objective is more tactical than strategic. In this old standard approach, less emphasis is placed on reinforcing a continuous narrative. The narrative is the brand. And I love the fact that you all are saying, nope, we're going to take that standard approach and we're going to leave it aside for this contextual approach that says all of our messages, when we communicate to the outside world, all of our messages are crafted in a manner that reinforces our brand. And the objective is to be proactive in your strategy with a consistent theme that always reinforces the brand. A brand has power to the extent that that brand allows you to make decisions. It's not a marketing exercise where it's like, okay, there's a PowerPoint somewhere. Did you look at the PowerPoint? No, I'm too busy. Instead, it's a living document that you go to and you check in with. And you allow yourself, am I making decisions that are reinforcing this thing I say I am? If I'm not, why would I do that? Right? So this notion of message discipline comes from this, quote, contextual approach. And the great brands are fiercely diligent about that messaging discipline, where they know and realize that at every single touch point with a stakeholder, those values are coming across. So like I said, even though they may not have seen this stakeholder, your internal documentation, they can almost report it back to you because you're so consistent in the delivery of that ethos because you always go back to our strategy and our brand. Those things live and breathe together and they work together. And because you believe in it authentically, you create this kind of consistency with this very powerful contextual approach. I'm going to tell you right now, the Umdash Group brand and the rebranding effort, and by the way, this is real rebranding. Why? Because there's the new articulation of a very powerful, clear, important, simple meaning system that's being communicated, and it's permeating this building today, right? So in that context, your Umdash Group brand is here for the taking, but it's not going to work if people don't believe it. It's not going to work if you don't take the time to internalize it and make it your own. If you don't take the time to think through how do I take our strategy, our common vision, and use it as a lens in my everyday, day-to-day activities, which we'll work on and talk about during the workshop, it's not going to work. And I've seen this happen many, many times with many companies. They come up with a great brand, very clear, and the people are like, well, listen, I got too many fires to put out. I don't have time to bother with all this marketing stuff. And that's a mistake. So it's up to you all to say, now, Americus, we are the stewards of this amazing thing. We're going to tattoo the Umdash Group brand on our body. I'm joking. But maybe not. And we're going to move forth and we're going to make this thing real. Leadership support has to send that message. You are the leaders. You all are the advocates. You all are the brand evangelists. If you don't believe it, come on, cut it out. It's not going to work, right? And it was discussed earlier in the sessions today that every single person is part of the brand, no matter what they're doing, right? And you can make the most incredible brand ever. If the people that are touching consumers at the front line don't have that vision, it doesn't work. It doesn't come through, right? We worked with a company called JetBlue. You may have heard of this airline. One of the things they were concerned about is first of all, it's really hard to brand in the airline space because airline is super commoditized, right? Price and schedule drives a lot of what people do. And people look at the airlines as like kind of a painful thing that you just kind of tolerate to get from A to B. But JetBlue said, we want to make that flight we want to see if we can get that flight to be part of the experience that gets some of the halo positivity of that great vacation that you're going to have and not have that thing separate. So one of the things they talked about was we can reimagine what we're doing all we want. If the people on the front lines don't share that, then none of this gets through. So one of the things that they did was to elevate everyone in the organization to have a common understanding of what the key goal is with respect to delighting people on their travel experiences. Everyone. Why? One of the things that they did was, we're not going to call the baggage handlers. We're going to call them crew members. Why? Because you're a crew member. You're an important part of this. Ticket gate agent, you're an important part of this. Pilot, you're the same. Important part of this, obviously. Right? Pilots get off the plane and help clean the plane. Why? Because we understand this is a common thing that we're trying to get to. And so you have to have full support of leadership. Otherwise, you're not going to have a brand, or it certainly won't stick in terms of what the research has told us. Right? The other thing is, what does it take to make the Umdash brand come to life? Can you deliver on these promises? Right? You have to ask yourself these sorts of questions. And when we go into the workshops, we'll start to unpack this with granularity insofar as how it associates with your specific day-to-day tasks. And again, guys, listen to me carefully. I've been doing this a long time. I've seen companies try to do this, and I'm like, wow, this is not going to work. You guys suck. And I'm not saying that just to blow smoke. I'm literally saying, when I saw this work, and I was able to take a close look at it, I was like, wow, I hope they let me use this at some point as a case study at the Wharton School so that I can say, let me show you what a rebranding initiative actually looks like, a really good one. But again, you take it to that point to the people, and if you don't breathe life into it, it falls short, right? So it's up to you all to be able to do this. Use the brand framework to promote discipline, as I said before, very important part of this, and thinking about those different elements. Living the Group brand is an ongoing, evolving process and a journey, right? So the great brands didn't just pop up overnight. You guys said it, watch this now. Your colleague said, what did he say? We're not going to be dinosaurs, right? We're not going to be unicorns. We're going to be phoenixes. Phoenixes? We're going to rise from the, oh, come on. When I heard that, I got goosebumps. Rise from the ashes. Reinvent ourselves as many times as is necessary to stay relevant and stay at the top, leading this whole thing super strong, right? And to be a phoenix, you have to understand that this is an ongoing journey. And you have to put forth the effort to work towards creating this for yourself and your colleagues and the people on your teams to be able to sing from this common set of principles, right? So you want to be able to do this. So what are some of the things that you do, right? Communicate the brand identity at every chance you get. The fantastic brands are the brands that realize we have an opportunity at every single touch point when we talk to a stakeholder to be able to reinforce what it is we think we are and what we stand for and how we're differentiated and all of those things, right? And so one of the things that Apple did was not only we're going to brand ourselves as hip, cool, and creative, we're going to brand the other guys as stodgy, archaic, and uninteresting, right? My point is, you protect your own brand, you communicate don't let someone else brand you, right? Don't let someone else show up and tell some story because you're not consistently putting your narrative out there on the forefront. Very, very important to do that. That's step number one. Step two, you got to protect the brand, like fiercely. Warren Buffett is famous for saying, you can lose me billions of dollars, I'll be fine. But if you ruin my reputation, I'm going to be ruthless, right? The brand has that power. So you have to protect it. The great brands protect it. Brands like Disney protect their brand. They make sure that we're touching people and we're very consistent with what we're doing with every single touch point. So fiercely protect your brand, be genuine and authentic. Wolfgang talked about this earlier, right? That authenticity comes from being able to think through, how do I take this vision and make it my own in my division and use it as a lens to make decisions. Step 4 is exactly that. Marketing fails when it's just some exercise that is only creating a logo, creating a new set of colors. What I was impressed with was when I talked to Michael, he could explain every single element. This is shocking to me. He could explain every single curve, every color, and tell you exactly why it was chosen based on, not BS, based on going back to those key principles and thinking through deeply sociologically the work and how Umdash can redefine itself and be dominant in this space of this life cycle, which is huge to me. To me, that's a beautiful model that says, listen, in the space of building, we create spaces. Genius. Because you might say, well, that's just lofty language. It's not lofty language if there's stuff behind it. It's not just BS marketing. Oh, we got a tagline. No, we make spaces. There's something powerful. And if every single person, if you sat there and asked them, well, what does this mean? What do you mean when you say we make spaces? And you can tell the story. Then that means you've got a brand and not just a tagline. Okay? Always looking for meaningful ways to express your identity. Very, very important as well. And you've got that with the swag. By the way, the swag. Can I just say something? I got to see more Umdash Group, Doka, Space Maker. I got to see swag, guys. Come on. Like, I rep Wharton all the time, the swag. Why? Because it's like, I'm proud. I want you to know I'm affiliated with this. And when you have that kind of pride, watch this, pride in the community. Like, will you rock your Umdash Group clothing outside of work? Yes. if you really are into this, right? So look for the ways that I can say, and by the way, there's an incredible thing that says, when your work, watch this, when the work has purpose, when the brand and the strategy and the work has purpose, and it substantively feeds your soul, and you get up and you're with colleagues, you're all on the same page, and you're doing this as a team, just like a football squad, there's power in that. Because now your work is not just, oh, I go to work. No, your work is going out there and passionately living your purpose by making your clients feel like we can be the best we can be if we partner with the Group people, right? And if you believe that, they'll pick up on that. Because the bottom line is everyone wants to be a part of something. Watch this now. Everyone wants to be a part of something. So you have the opportunity to create that something and bring it to the world with the exact same kind of fervor and fandom that you would see with any, quote, soccer team. I call it football, but whatever. Okay. So these are the takeaways, and then we'll pause for some questions. I love this. Come on, guys. I need to hear some energy now. Are you excited? Yes. Yes. Come on. You create spaces for the future. The new branding supports this. It's not BS, it's real, right? It's a real thing. The brand is more than a logo. It represents the new spirit in the Group. The Group is taking on a new and also active role in the market. If you all work together and do this, growth will be driven by the divisions in your core businesses. It's necessary. You need this. The brand, all those examples, you're going to say, Americus, you were showing us all these things that have nothing to do with buildings. I know that. But the logic, it's the logic that matters. And people miss that. It's the logic of the connection of building the relationship through the pillar of the brand. So the work has been done. Like I said, I'm very impressed with the work that's been done to further develop the existing divisional brands and get this architecture out there. It's now up to you. I challenge you. I challenge you to take this on as your personal mission, to think through how can I bring this strategic vision, this brand, this ethos, this we journey. How do I make this real and not just pure inspiration, which it should be, but also build it into the fabric of what it is that you do in your day-to-day activities. So the key brand messaging for all companies is create brand identification and distinction in the marketplace, just like those examples I showed you. And I think if you do this, I'm excited for you. Don't let me be more excited than you all in your own company. I'm excited for you guys. I can't believe, when I first got the call, I was like, and I was listening to like, what do? They do these incredible structures. And I was like, wow, okay, that's kind of interesting. And then I met people like, wow, this passion, hold on. These people are into this. This is different. And it's very impressive because there's an opportunity to take, just like Wolfgang said, what you all are doing into the next level. So I'll leave it there. That's my talk. I hope this has been interesting and useful, somewhat inspirational, but also informative as well. You can reach out to me at any time if you want to further have conversations about what this all looks like. We've worked with companies to help bring this alive. Again, I'm super impressed with what the Group has done here and will continue to do over the next several days and years into your future. But I hope this was useful, and I really appreciate you, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
So
Thank
we're
you
going to
very
take
much.
questions, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Americus, for this really inspiring speech. And as you mentioned, we'll get to a little Q&A now and to see around all of our tables if there are any questions or which questions there are out there. We have Julio already in between the tables to be ready with a mic as soon as we see a question coming up. And I think we have one right over there already.
Americus, that was great. So thank you. It was great getting to know you and great to see you kind of absorb what we're trying to do. Fantastic. What do you see when companies go through this? You know, everybody's pumped up. You know, we'll have a great session here. We'll have some things that come out of it. Mm-hmm. But How do you see that people keep this momentum going?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think that's the biggest challenge because, like, when we're about to go out and hit the field, get on the pitch, whatever your sport is. We're excited now, and to your question, I think the way that you do it is to keep that psychic energy going. You become very purposeful and disciplined in how I'm going to do that every single day. Like, one of the things I do every single day is I have a set of beliefs that I have, a core brand that I have made for myself, both for my brand and also Wharton. And one of the things that I do is I actually get up every single day, and when I make my calendar, I'm looking for the things that I'm going to do, and I'm asking myself, how am I reinforcing what it is that I'm trying to do? So there's a kind of diligence, there's a kind of muscle that you need to flex that takes this outside of the world of, hey, I'm inspired and pumped up, and into, okay, what am I doing today, right now? What are my tasks? And how do these tasks feed into how do I do them in a way that resonates with what I believe I stand for and what my brand is all about? And I do that with everything that I do, that I engage in. That's how I choose the types of topics that I want to study. That's how I choose the types of organizations that I want to engage with, all thinking back to, always going back to. And it's not easy because the first thing that happens is to get distracted when you're putting out the fires, right? This is a very much a strategic kind of approach, but it's hard to be strategic when you're like, okay, I got a lot of what to do. So you have to step back and force yourself into that more disciplined mode. And there's a great quote that I love to say that, this is why I love this, what you all are doing, is because with a clear, very precise, articulated vision, you now have a roadmap, right? There's a very famous quote that says, if you don't know where you're going, any path will take you there, right? So the point of this is to say that we know where we're going. We have a brand and a strategy and a vision and an ethos, and that allows us to choose the paths that we believe will most strongly reinforce that. But it requires a lot of discipline to overcome that knee-jerk reaction and to be much more strategic and disciplined about being strategic and helping each other do it in your teams. Does that make sense? Yes.
Yeah. Hello, I'm Maria from Ventures.
Hi.
I took away a lot of learnings from your speech, and you presented a lot of great examples.
Yeah.
And all of them have been consumer brands.
Yeah.
Consumer brands are related to lifestyle, emotion.
Yeah.
Do you have some examples or also some guidelines for B2B brands? Because there's, from my point of view, a slight difference because you have procurement departments who are involved in decisions and so.
Yeah, I love that example. I was working with a company, a lighting company, that sells into fitness facilities. And one of the things that I helped this particular company understand is that the people who make the decisions to buy into your product, they're humans. And they have a specific sort of initiative that says, I got to look good in front of my bosses, so I got to make the right sort of procurement decisions to be able to do that. So to be able to understand that, to help these folks sell their lighting in a way or tell a story about the lighting that's more than just, well, here's how bright it gets or whatever, is something that you think about. You're always thinking about how do the features, and by the way, here's my premise. I think this type of stuff is actually more important in B2B because it's relationships, right? So it's one thing, you're 100% correct, it's a consumer product, that's a consumer thing, there's a lifestyle, you're showing it off.
The consumer brand,
Yeah, it's more emotional.
Our brand can be emotional, but I think it's more complex.
I think it's more complex, I think it's 100%. And again, my argument is not you're going to be Apple or you're going to be any of these B2C companies. My argument is that there's some logic there that I think you can tap into and elevate yourselves and amplify what it is that you're doing, even amidst some of these nuances and complexities. And that's the whole point of our workshop, is to work through the details of this to figure out how this might look. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
All right, do we have any other questions? I'm looking out for raised hands. Yes, Sebastian.
Hello, my name is Sebastian. You mentioned you also do the branding for the school you're teaching.
I do.
Would be interesting, what are the values of a school and how differentiate you?
Oh, that's a beautiful question, Sebastian. I love that. When we first started, we were making all kinds of mistakes. Us, the marketing people, because we would say we create knowledge. And everyone, well, Stanford creates knowledge, Harvard creates knowledge, everybody creates knowledge. So we had to go back and say, well, what is it about us that's really different? And what we ended up landing on was, we are actually at the Wharton School, we are the first collegiate business school on the planet. So we were started in 1881. We went back, watch this now. We went back to our lineage. And we said, how can we take our lineage that nobody can copy and build on that actual lineage that's not lofty, but real, but says something that we've been in this for so long. Let us show you how we innovate and how we lead from the front. So our pivot on that was to be able to say that we can't use language. That's a very important thing, by the way. It's like use language that no one else can own. No one else can say that they're doing the exact same thing. And I think that litmus test is passed for you guys. But that was one of the things that we struggled with as experts trying to do that, is to make sure that what we're telling you about our story is very much well differentiated. And once we have those pillars, those core pillars that no one else can copy, then we can layer the loftier stuff on top of that stuff. Does that make sense? It's a great question, Sebastian.
All right. Where else do I see a hand raised? Roland, Julio, over there, right in the middle. Oh, we have René with the mic very close already.
Yeah. Hi. Great speech.
Thank you.
Love the passion. Can you please elaborate a little bit more what you mean with message discipline?
Yeah, I love that. Thanks for that question. Message discipline means basically you have a brand framework. You have an architecture for a brand. And every time you are trying to create a communication to an external audience, a stakeholder, you vet that message through your brand architecture. And when you do that, so for example, a brand will have values and you want the messages to always reflect those values. So the consistency comes because everyone has the same vision and articulation as to what Umdash Group is and what they do and why they do it. And in that context of that architecture, every message is meant to reinforce some element of that architecture, so that at the end of the day, there's no sort of rogue messages that create a kind of chaos or kind of disassociation with what it is that you're doing. So when I put up Nike and everyone says, just do it, sport, Michael Jordan, blah, 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 what that means is they've been very good at message discipline around what it is that they stand for, such that at the end of the day, their external audience and stakeholders can almost, in a sense, repeat that ethos back because it's consistent, and the message discipline, the discipline comes from being consistent and not just going out there and going rogue with the things that you say, but always having the things that you say fit inside that beautiful square. Can I just say that? The square with the buildings. I love that. I might tattoo it on my body. I may. I'm thinking about it. But you know what I mean? So that's the metaphor. But the idea is the discipline comes from, we know who we are, and before we speak, we always understand that whatever our touch point is with any stakeholder or external audience, we're reinforcing that same ethos and that vision because we always go back to it, because it's not just some marketing exercise living on a PowerPoint somewhere on somebody's computer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks a lot. Cheers.
Very welcome.
All right. I see one more hand raised. I think we have time for one more question. And after that, the key message piece is actually our perfect bridge to the exercise.
Okay, great.
Julia.
Thank you. One question. Hi.
Hi.
The mom of Emma.
Hi, Julia. Emma's mom.
What is your experience or your opinion about the difference about the brand and employer brand, especially in the B2B sector?
The brand and
employer brand.
Employer brand. Like you mean like organizational culture?
No. About when you go out as, let's say, HR people and hire people, the employer branding aspect.
Yeah. Huge.
Should there be a difference?
No.
What is your experience? What is your opinion?
Yeah, I love that question, Julia. The answer is there shouldn't be a difference. The answer is that the beautiful thing about the brand building exercise is that it can be used in an HR sort of function, in the sense of trying to attract people who you think, who will signal to you that they have that kind of shared vision that you are trying to put forth with the company. One of the worst things that I see in my world with students, advising students, is watching them choose companies without having a sense of whether or not that brand fits with who they are. And so that's a huge mistake. That's the other thing I didn't talk about a lot here because it's an entire conversation of how the brand becomes a beacon for attracting the type of employee that has enough diversity of thought that you're not closed off, but has enough kind of common DNA amongst each other that they'll, and by the way, it's just interesting because the research is clear. When you attract a like-minded group because you have a strong employee brand, which should be consistent with the overall brand, that person will be much happy over their work lifetime because they're not, it just becomes something different. It moves away from like a work and into something that's closer to a calling because they're self-selecting it. And by the way, some companies, like for example, a lot of our students go to Amazon and the culture in Amazon is quite, how do I describe this? Yeah, draconian. But some people love that. Some people, that's how I thrive. Less direction and a little bit more like that. Other places are different. But I think it's actually super important. What I counsel my students is say, please understand this culture and this brand first. And then if you do that, you can have a better understanding does this place really fit with who I am authentically and how I want to show up? And then you will create an opportunity to attract the type of person who will work harder and enjoy it more because they are in alignment with what it is that you stand for. And they should choose you for that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Americus, for answering the question. Big hand again to Americus Reed.
Thank you.
Well done, Americus.
Thank you.
Stay on top of the latest in identity, marketing, branding, and pop culture by following Americus Reed on social media or learn more at americusreed.com.